The crystalline spires of the United Earth Coalition headquarters gleamed in the morning sun as three massive Zarkax vessels descended from the clouds. Their obsidian hulls seemed to absorb light itself, each ship larger than the biggest human skyscraper. The assembled crowd of diplomats, military officials, and media representatives stood in tense silence as the alien ships settled onto the massive landing pad with surprising grace. Captain Sarah Chen watched from her position near the diplomatic delegation, her green beret perfectly adjusted on her head. As head of the UEC's Special Operations Command, she hadn't expected to be here today. But something in her gut had told her this meeting would need more than just politicians and their carefully prepared speeches. The Zarkax ship's external panels shifted and reformed, creating elaborate entrance ramps that extended to the ground. The aliens that emerged made Chen's combat-trained muscles tense involuntarily. They stood nearly 9 feet tall, their bodies covered in what appeared to be living armor that shifted colors like oil on water. Their four-armed frames moved with predatory grace, and their elongated heads housed 3 pairs of eyes that glowed with bioluminescent intelligence. Ambassador Michael Reeves stepped forward, his dark skin contrasting sharply with his white diplomatic uniform. On behalf of humanity and the United Earth Coalition, we welcome you to Earth, noble representatives of the Zarkax Empire. The lead alien, its armor trimmed in deep crimson, made a sound that might have been a laugh. When it spoke, its words were translated through the advanced AI systems both sides had agreed to use. Noble. You assign titles of nobility to those you've never met. How typically presumptuous of a primitive species. Chen saw Reeves flinch slightly but maintain his diplomatic smile. We mean no presumption, merely respect for. Respect. Another Zarkax interrupted, its armor rippling with patterns of azure and gold. You cannot respect what you do not understand, and you understand nothing of the galaxy or your place in it. The crimson-trimmed leader stepped closer to the human delegation, its massive frame towering over them. We received your transmission 6 of your Earth months ago, your invitation to peaceful dialogue and mutual cooperation. We came not out of diplomatic interest, but curiosity. We wanted to see what manner of species would be so bold, or so foolish, as to think they could treat with the Zarkax Empire as equals. Chen's hand instinctively moved closer to her sidearm as the alien leader's tone grew more hostile. The movement, slight as it was, caught the attention of one of the Zarkax warriors, who clicked its mandibles in what seemed like amusement. Ambassador Reeves tried again. Surely there is value in dialogue between our peoples. While we may be younger than your civilization, humanity has much to offer. Our art, our culture, our technological innovations. The Zarkax leader's translator couldn't fully capture the derision in its multi-tone voice. You barely understand quantum mechanics. Your fastest ships would take decades to reach your system's outer planets. Your weapons are little more than refined projectile launchers. What could you possibly offer the Empire? The assembled human delegation shifted uncomfortably as the alien leader continued. We have conquered species far more advanced than yours. Civilizations that had mastered dark energy, built Dyson spheres, created virtual worlds that spanned galaxies. They all fell before the Empire's might. And you think you can stand as our equals? Chen had seen enough. She stepped forward, her movement precise and controlled. Then why did you come? All 6 of the alien leader's eyes fixed on her. The soldier speaks out of turn. How appropriate for your kind. When diplomacy fails, you resort to military aggression. You misunderstand, Chen said, her voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. I'm not speaking as a soldier. I'm asking a logical question. If we're so beneath you, why expend the resources to come here? Why not simply ignore us? The Zarkax leader's armor rippled with patterns of deep purple and black. Perhaps we came to decide whether your species deserves to continue existing at all. The galaxy has limited resources. Why waste them on primitives who will never amount to anything of worth? A heavy silence fell over the gathering. The threat was clear, and humanity's representatives knew they were facing a pivotal moment in their species' history. The azure-trimmed Zarkax stepped forward. Perhaps we should give them a chance to prove their worth. It is tradition, after all, when encountering new species. The leader's armor shifted to a pattern of crimson and gold. Yes, the trial of valor. Though I doubt these creatures could survive even the first stage. Ambassador Reeves looked concerned. What exactly are you proposing? A simple test, the leader said. One of your warriors against our chosen champions. If your representative survives, we will consider your species worthy of continued existence. If not, the alien left the consequence unspoken. Before anyone else could respond, Chen stepped forward again. I volunteer. The Zarkax leader's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. You? A female of your species, barely half our size. Wrong question, Chen replied, meeting the alien's gaze steadily. The real question is, are your champions ready? The alien's armor rippled with patterns of surprise and then amusement. Very well, little warrior. You shall have your chance to die with honor, at least. Prepare yourself. The trial begins at your planet's next dawn. As the aliens returned to their ships to make preparations, Ambassador Reeves grabbed Chen's arm. Captain, what are you doing? We can't risk everything on a single combat situation against an obviously superior force. Chen watched the Zarkax ships with calculated interest. With all due respect, Mr. Ambassador, we're already at risk. They came here to evaluate whether we deserve to exist. At least this way, we get to fight for our survival. She turned to face him, her expression determined. And they've already made their first mistake. What's that? They think size and technology determine the outcome of every battle. Chen allowed herself a small smile. They're about to learn what happens when you underestimate humanity. That night, as the world's media broadcast news of the impending trial, Chen prepared in her own way. She reviewed every second of footage of the Zarkax, studying their movements, the way their armor responded to their emotions, the subtle shifts in their stance that might telegraph their intentions. Where others saw impossible odds, she saw opportunities. Where others saw superior technology, she saw potential weaknesses. Because the Zarkax had indeed made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that humanity's relative youth as a species was a weakness. They didn't understand that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its technology or its physical prowess, but in its ability to adapt, to think creatively, to find solutions where none seemed to exist. As the sun set on what might be humanity's last day of true independence, Captain Sarah Chen prepared not just for a fight, but for a lesson in human ingenuity that the Zarkax Empire would never forget. The lunar surface stretched out like an endless silver desert under Earth's watchful gaze. The Zarkax had chosen this desolate battlefield with calculated precision, a neutral ground where humanity's greatest warrior would face their champions. They had transformed a crater into a massive arena, their quantum engineering creating atmospheric barriers and gravity controls that mimicked Earth-standard conditions. Captain Chen stood in the preparation chamber, a pressurized dome that served as her last sanctuary before the trials began. She had declined the Zarkax's generous offer of advanced armor, choosing instead to wear a modified version of her standard combat gear. The only concession to the alien environment was the thin force field generator strapped to her chest, a necessary precaution against the vacuum of space should the arena's containment be breached. Their champions have been announced, Dr. Emma Rodriguez said, her holographic image flickering slightly in the chamber's artificial light. As humanity's leading xenobiologist, she had spent the night analyzing every piece of data available on Zarkax physiology. 3 warriors, a blade master, a void weaver, and a battle sage. Each represents a different combat discipline in their culture. Chen checked her minimal equipment one last time. Tell me what I need to know. The blade master, designation Kohler, specializes in close combat. Their living armor can generate monomolecular edges from any point on their body. The void weaver, Tara, manipulates gravitational fields. They can literally bend space in small areas. And the battle sage, Zirkath, uses some form of psychic warfare we don't fully understand yet. So they've chosen champions that represent their physical, technological, and mental superiority, Chen noted, her voice betraying no emotion. Psychological warfare starts before the battle. Rodriguez's hologram nodded. They're streaming this across their entire empire. Billions of alien species will be watching. They want to make this a spectacle, a demonstration of why they're the dominant force in the galaxy. Then let's give them a show they'll never forget. Chen's eyes fixed on the arena entrance. Any last advice? Just data points, Rodriguez replied. Their armor shows slight color variations based on their emotional states. Purple indicates aggressive intent. Gold shows confidence. Red is for battle rage. And there's something else. Their neural networks seem to interface directly with their armor. It's a strength, but it could also be a weakness, Chen finished. Thank you, Doctor. Time to go demonstrate some human ingenuity. The arena's main gates opened with a sound like thunder, revealing a transformed lunar landscape. The Zarkax had created a complex battleground of varying elevations, scattered cover, and environmental hazards. Gravity fluctuated in different zones, and holographic obstacles appeared and disappeared at random intervals. Chen stepped onto the battlefield as the announcer's voice boomed across the arena in multiple languages. The three Zarkax champions emerged from the opposite side, their armor shifting through patterns of gold and purple. They moved with fluid grace, spreading out to surround her in a triangle formation. Kolar, the Blade Master, stepped forward first. Your courage honors you, human, but courage alone will not save you. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Chen's response was to drop into a ready stance, her movements deliberate and measured. You know, where I come from, we have a saying. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. The alien's armor rippled with amusement. Your species' idioms will not change the outcome. We are superior in every way. That's the problem with being superior, Chen replied, her eyes tracking all three opponents simultaneously. You stop looking for ways to improve. Without warning, Kolar launched forward, his armor extending razor-sharp blades from every surface. Chen moved at the last possible moment, her body flowing like water around the attack. The Blade Master's momentum carried him past her, his massive frame exactly where she wanted it. Chen's hand shot out, placing a small device on Kolar's armor as they passed. The alien warrior spun with impossible speed, blades singing through the air. But Chen was already gone, rolling behind a holographic barrier. First blood is mine, Kolar roared, his armor gleaming with golden confidence. Then he noticed the device. Before he could react, it activated, sending an electromagnetic pulse through his living armor. The effect was instantaneous. The neural interface between warrior and armor overloaded, causing the living metal to seize up. Kolar staggered, his movements suddenly jerky and uncoordinated. Impossible. The battle sage, Zirkath, snarled. How did you know? Chen was already moving, using the scattered cover to stay ahead of the Void Weaver's gravitational attacks. Simple observation. Your armor isn't just protection. It's an extension of your nervous system. Complex, advanced, but still vulnerable to basic electromagnetic disruption. The Void Weaver, Tara, warped space around Chen, trying to trap her in a gravity well. But Chen had studied their patterns, had noticed how the air rippled slightly before each manipulation. She timed her movements perfectly, using the increased gravity to build momentum before launching herself at Zarkath. The battle sage's psychic attack slammed into her mind like a tidal wave, but Chen had prepared for this too. Years of Special Forces mental conditioning, combined with specific meditation techniques she practiced through the night, helped her compartmentalize the assault. Your mind is fragmented, Zirkath said, confusion evident in their tone. How are you blocking me? Chen's response was physical rather than verbal. She used the battle sage's moment of confusion to close the distance, her movements economical and precise. A series of strikes targeted specific points on the alien's armor, points where she had observed the neural connections were strongest. The gathered audience, both human and alien, watched in stunned silence as Captain Sarah Chen systematically dismantled the supposed superiority of the Zarkak's champions. She wasn't winning through brute force or advanced technology, but through careful observation, tactical thinking, and the time-tested principles of human combat that had evolved over thousands of years of warfare. As the first phase of the trial drew to a close, with Kohler's armor still malfunctioning and Zarkak struggling to maintain their psychic defenses, the Void Weaver prepared their ultimate attack. Space itself began to twist and distort around the arena, but Chen's expression remained calm. She had already identified 7 possible counters to this attack, and as the gravity fields began to warp reality itself, humanity's champion prepared to show the galaxy that sometimes the most primitive solution could overcome the most advanced technology. The real trial was just beginning. The Void Weaver's ultimate attack transformed the arena into a maelstrom of warped space and contradictory gravitational fields. Fragments of the lunar surface twisted into impossible shapes, creating a deadly dance of debris and distorted reality. To the watching billions across the galaxy, it looked like the end for the human warrior. But Captain Chen had been counting on this. In the milliseconds before Xterra's attack reached full power, Chen activated the small gravity modulators she'd attached to her boots, basic human technology that could never match Zarkak's sophistication. She didn't try to resist the gravitational chaos. Instead, she surrendered to it, letting the conflicting forces pull her in multiple directions at once. You see, Xterra's voice resonated through the warped space. Your primitive understanding of physics cannot save you from. The alien's boast cut off as Chen's body suddenly shot through the maelstrom like a bullet. She had used the opposing gravitational forces to build up enormous momentum, turning her opponent's power against them. The Void Weaver's own attack had created the perfect delivery system for Chen's counterstrike. The impact sent both warriors tumbling across the lunar surface. Chen rolled to her feet immediately, but Xterra struggled to rise, their armor flickering with patterns of confusion and distress. "Impossible," the alien gasped. "You turned my void manipulation against me. No primitive species has ever." "That's your second mistake," Chen replied, moving with careful precision as she circled her remaining opponents. "You keep using that word primitive as if it's a weakness, but sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective." The battle sage, Zarkak, launched another psychic assault, but this time Chen was ready. She had spent the first phase of combat allowing small glimpses of her surface thoughts, letting the alien believe they were reading her strategy. Now, she opened her mind fully, to the countless hours of combat meditation she had practiced, to the mechanical precision of weapons assembly and disassembly, to the endless repetition of basic training exercises. Zarkak staggered back, their armor flashing crimson with frustration. "Your mind. It's like trying to read a book made of mirrors." "Another simple solution," Chen explained, never stopping her calculated movement pattern. "You expected complex mental defenses. Instead, I gave you simplicity, pure focus. No strategy to read because every action is instinct, burned into muscle memory through thousands of repetitions." The Blade Master had finally regained some control of his armor, but the neural interface was still compromised. Kohler charged forward, his movements lacking their earlier fluid grace. Chen sidestepped the attack, noting how the alien's armor struggled to generate its molecular blades. "You rely too much on your technology," she said, ducking under a wild swing. "You've forgotten the fundamentals of combat. Balance, momentum, the relationship between body and gravity." Each word was punctuated by a precise strike at the already damaged neural interfaces in Kohler's armor. The watching crowd had fallen into stunned silence. The Zarkak's representatives, who had expected a quick and humiliating defeat of the human warrior, now leaned forward in their seats, their armor patterns shifting through colors of disbelief and growing concern. But it was the alien leader's chief scientist, watching from their command ship, who first realized the full implications of what was happening. "High Commander," they said, their voice trembling slightly. "The human. She's not just fighting our champions. She's systematically testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses in every aspect of our combat systems." Down in the arena, Chen continued her methodical dismantling of the Zarkak's combat doctrine. Every move served multiple purposes, testing their armor's response times, analyzing their neural interface limitations, mapping their psychological responses to different types of challenges. The Void Weaver attempted to coordinate with the Battle Sage, combining their powers to create a psychically charged gravitational attack. But Chen had anticipated this too. She threw a handful of simple metal spheres into the air, basic training aids used by human soldiers for hand-eye coordination exercises. As the gravitational fields caught the spheres, Chen's precise strikes sent them ricocheting through the warped space. Each impact carried a specific frequency that disrupted the aliens' neural interfaces, creating feedback loops in their living armor. "You should be honored," Zerkath growled, struggling to maintain their psychic assault as their armor glitched and sparked. "No species has lasted this long against our elite warriors." Chen's response was calm, almost educational. "That's because they all tried to match your strength, to prove they were your equals in technology and power. But humanity learned long ago that victory doesn't always go to the strongest or most advanced. It goes to those who can adapt, who can turn an enemy's strength into a weakness." The Battle Sage's next attack faltered as they processed her words. You're not just fighting us. You're studying us. Everything you've done has been a test." Finally, Chen said, allowing herself a small smile, "You're beginning to understand. This isn't just about proving humanity's worth. It's about showing you why underestimating any species is a dangerous mistake." As if to emphasize her point, Chen executed a complex series of movements that positioned all three Zarkak's champions exactly where she wanted them. The Void Weaver's gravitational fields, the Battle Sage's psychic emanations, and the Blade Master's compromised armor all intersected at precisely the right moment. The resulting cascade failure sent all three aliens crashing to their knees, their advanced combat systems overwhelmed by the elegant simplicity of Chen's strategy. But as the dust settled on the lunar surface, a new sound cut through the arena. A slow, deliberate applause from the Zarkak's high command platform. The alien leader's armor had shifted to a color pattern that none of the human observers had seen before. They were about to discover that this trial had been about far more than just proving humanity's worth. The true test was only just beginning. The Zarkak's supreme commander descended from the observation platform, their armor shifting through patterns never before seen by human eyes. Deep indigo mixed with threads of silver, like stars scattered across a night sky. The arena's atmospheric barriers parted before them as they approached Chen and the defeated champions. "Hold your positions," the commander ordered as the fallen warriors attempted to rise. Their voice carried an authority that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of space. "Captain Chen, you have exceeded every parameter of our assessment." Chen maintained her ready stance, eyes tracking every subtle movement. Assessment. This was never just about testing humanity's combat capabilities, was it? The commander's armor rippled with what might have been appreciation. No. The trial of combat was merely the surface layer. We needed to understand how your species thinks, how you adapt, how you analyze and overcome superior forces. They gestured to the defeated champions. "These warriors were not meant to defeat you. They were meant to be studied by you." A murmur ran through the watching crowd as translation systems conveyed the commander's words in hundreds of languages. The human diplomatic corps, watching from Earth, exchanged bewildered glances. "The galaxy is changing," the commander continued. "For millennia, the Zarkak's empire has maintained order through technological superiority and unmatched military might. But a new threat has emerged from the dark spaces between galaxies. an enemy that renders our advanced technology useless, that learns and adapts to every strategy we employ. Understanding dawned in Chen's eyes. You're losing a war. We are facing extinction, the commander corrected. This enemy, which we call the Void Collective, possesses technology so advanced it appears to violate the laws of physics themselves. Our finest warriors, our most sophisticated weapons, our most brilliant battle strategies, all have failed. The commander's armor shifted to display images of battles in deep space, massive Zarkax fleets being torn apart by weapons that seemed to ignore the basic principles of reality. But then we discovered something interesting. Primitive worlds, those we had dismissed as unworthy of our attention, sometimes displayed remarkable resistance to Void Collective attacks. Because they didn't rely on advanced technology, Chen reasoned, her tactical mind already processing the implications. They couldn't be turned against themselves. Precisely. The Void Collective's primary strategy is to corrupt and reverse advanced technology. The more sophisticated the civilization, the more vulnerable they are. The commander's armor displayed more images, worlds where simple projectile weapons had proved more effective than quantum disruptors, where basic battle tactics had succeeded where complex eye-driven strategies had failed. So you came to Earth not to judge our worthiness, Chen said, but to learn from us. To understand how a primitive species might approach a fight against an overwhelmingly superior force. The commander's armor pulsed with confirmation. And you, Captain Chen, have demonstrated exactly what we hoped to find. You didn't just defeat our champions, you systematically analyzed their weaknesses, adapted your tactics in real time, and used our own technological superiority against us. All with minimal reliance on advanced systems. But Chen wasn't entirely convinced. Why the charade? Why not simply ask for our help? Would your leaders have believed us? Would they have trusted that the mighty Zarkax Empire truly needed humanity's assistance? The commander's armor rippled with what might have been amusement. No, we needed to prove it to ourselves as much as to you. We needed to see firsthand how humanity thinks, how you fight, how you overcome impossible odds. The revelation sent waves of murmurs through the watching crowds. The Zarkax Empire, the most powerful civilization in known space, was asking for humanity's help, not because of their technology or their resources, but because of their ability to think differently, to adapt, to find unconventional solutions. There's more, Chen said, studying the commander's armor patterns. You're not just looking for tactical advice. You're preparing for something specific. The commander's armor shifted to a deep, midnight blue. The Void Collective has breached the outer defenses of our empire. Our projections show they will reach Earth's sector of space within one standard solar year. We need humanity's perspective, your unique way of thinking, if we are to have any hope of stopping them. Chen finally relaxed her combat stance, but her mind was already racing with possibilities. You realize this changes everything. The power dynamic, the diplomatic relationship, the entire foundation of human-Zarkax interaction. Yes, the commander agreed. That is precisely why we needed this test. We needed to prove, beyond any doubt, that humanity's perceived primitiveness is actually your greatest strength. They turned to address the watching audience, their voice carrying across the arena. This was never about determining humanity's right to exist. It was about determining if they could help us all continue to exist. As the implications of this revelation rippled through the assembled crowds, Chen noticed something else, subtle movements in the space above the arena, distortions that reminded her of the Void Weaver's attacks, but somehow different, more alien. She realized with sudden clarity that the true test might not be over yet. The Void Collective might be closer than anyone realized, and this demonstration of humanity's capabilities might have attracted unwanted attention. The real battle was about to begin. The distortions in space above the lunar arena grew more pronounced, forming patterns that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. The Zarkax commander's armor shifted to deep crimson, a warning pattern that Chen had never seen before. They're here. the commander announced, their voice carrying a note of genuine fear. The Void Collective must have detected our test. They've breached our quantum barriers as if they didn't exist. The lunar sky fractured like broken glass, and through the cracks emerged something that defied description. Shapes that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, beings that appeared to be made of living mathematics. The Void Collective had arrived. Chen's mind raced with calculations and possibilities. Everyone clear the arena. Fall back to the defensive positions. She turned to the commander. Your weapons won't work against them, will they? No, they turn our technology against us. Every defense we've created, they've adapted to and overcome. The commander's armor rippled with frustration. We need to retreat, to regroup and... No, Chen interrupted, her eyes fixed on the descending entities. That's exactly what they expect. It's what you've always done. Relied on your technology, and when it failed, you fell back to regroup and develop new technology. But that's not the human way. The Void Collective beings had reached the arena floor, their forms shifting and writhing in ways that hurt the eyes to look at. Where they touched the ground, reality itself seemed to warp and twist. Chen turned to the defeated Zarkax champions. Kolar, your blades can still form, even with damaged neural interfaces, right? Terra, you can still manipulate gravity in small areas. And Zirkath, your psychic abilities don't rely entirely on your armor. The champions nodded, understanding beginning to dawn in their expressions. Then we fight, Chen declared, not with technology, but with the most basic principles of combat. We use what we have, not what we wish we had. The commander's armor displayed patterns of confusion. But their technological superiority is exactly why we'll win. Chen interrupted. They expect advanced weapons, complex strategies. They've evolved to counter technology. But sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. She quickly outlined her plan, using hand gestures and basic tactical signals that required no technology to convey. The Zarkax warriors, stripped of their usual technological advantages, found themselves learning human combat techniques in real time. The Void Collective advanced, their impossible forms distorting everything around them. They seemed almost curious about this small group that hadn't retreated, that stood their ground with primitive weapons and basic battle formations. Chen led the charge, coordinating with Kolar to create simple but effective attack patterns. The Blade Master's natural ability, rather than his armor's enhancement, proved surprisingly effective against the Void beings. They could counter advanced energy weapons, but physical blades wielded with skill and precision still cut true. Terra learned to use small, controlled gravitational manipulations instead of grand spatial distortions. The Void Collective could adapt to complex gravitational algorithms, but they struggled against basic applications of force and mass. Zirkath's psychic abilities, stripped of technological enhancement, reached out to touch the alien minds, and found them vulnerable to the most fundamental form of mental attack. Pure, focused human willpower backed by determination. The battle that unfolded was unlike anything the watching galaxy had ever seen. Human tactical doctrine, combined with Zarkax's natural abilities, created a hybrid fighting style that the Void Collective couldn't easily counter. Every time they adapted to one approach, the fighters would switch to something even more basic, more primitive, more unpredictable. This is what humanity offers the galaxy, Chen shouted as she coordinated another strike. Not technology, not resources, but perspective. The ability to step back, to remember the fundamentals, to find strength in simplicity. The Void Collective beings began to retreat, their mathematical forms showing signs of actual damage. They had evolved to counter the most advanced warfare in the galaxy, but they had no defense against the primitive elegance of hand-to-hand combat, of simple physics, of pure mental force. As the last of the Void beings withdrew through their dimensional fractures, the commander approached Chen, their armor displaying entirely new patterns, ones that spoke of respect, understanding, and hope. We came seeking teachers, they admitted, But we found something far more valuable. We found partners. Chen nodded, already thinking of the challenges ahead. The Void Collective will be back, and in greater numbers. They'll try to adapt to what we showed them today. But they won't succeed, Calder declared, his armor now displaying patterns that mimicked human combat stances. Because they cannot adapt to unpredictability itself. They cannot counter the infinite variations of primitive combat techniques combined with our natural abilities. This is just the beginning, Chen said, looking up at the Earth hanging in the lunar sky. Humanity has thousands of different fighting styles, countless tactical approaches, endless ways of combining the basic principles of combat with advanced capabilities. We can teach your empire not just how to fight, but how to think differently. The commander's armor shifted to display a complex pattern that represented formal alliance in Zarkak's culture. Then let this be the true beginning of our partnership, not as superior and inferior species, but as equals who complement each other's strengths. As the gathered forces began to organize and prepare for the challenges ahead, Chen couldn't help but smile at the irony. The Zarkaks had come to Earth looking down on humanity's primitive nature, only to discover that this very primitiveness might be the key to saving the galaxy. The battle against the Void Collective was far from over, but now there was hope. Hope born from the perfect fusion of human ingenuity and alien advancement, of primitive strength and technological power, of the wisdom to know when to embrace simplicity in an increasingly complex universe. Humanity had proven its worth not by matching the galaxy's most advanced civilization, but by reminding them of the fundamental truths they'd forgotten. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon isn't the most advanced technology, but the ability to think differently, to adapt, and to never, ever give up. The stars above seemed to shine brighter as human and Zarkak stood together, ready to face whatever the void might throw at them next. The age of isolation was over. The real adventure was just beginning. Last edited 4 minutes ago.